Hi, this is Professor Holly Johnson again, and this is our Gathering Research Materials PowerPoint to help you get started in finding the materials you need to write your research paper. So some basic information you need before we start is that your ultimate goal is to write a good research paper between 10 and 15 pages long. I'm sure for some of you that sounds like no problem and you've done it before, and others may think, oh my god, that's not even possible. Nobody can write that much. Basically, if you're in the second group, don't panic because we're going to take it one step at a time. And the first step is going to be writing the proposal. In order to do that, we have to gather some of the research materials we're going to need, and this PowerPoint is designed to help you figure out how to do that. Remember when you're working on coming up with the topic you want to write about that you're writing a research paper, and that's a little bit different from a report. So you're not just going to be reporting information like, butterflies are like this, and this type of butterfly lives in this part of the world. What you're doing is you're going to be taking a position using scholarly evidence to back it up. So you're making an argument, essentially. Not an argument like you're trying to be mean or trying to do anything bad, like arguing with somebody you don't like, but taking a position about a topic that you feel strongly about and that you can support with evidence. You have to pick a topic that you're interested in, otherwise, honestly, your paper won't be very good, so don't just pick something at random that you don't care that much about. And then once your proposal is approved, essentially, there are three different kinds of research you can do. One is just basic library research, going to look for books, and what I recommend is just going into the Mercer Library or whatever library is nearest to you and asking a reference librarian to help you with your topic. There are some topics that are just not going to lend themselves to book research because there may not be books on them. So if you're doing something on like, the a number of people who are obsessed with online poker, for example. There's just not going to be, textbooks or, large scale books on that topic. You're going to have to go with articles instead. Another type of research is interviews, going out and talking to actual sources. And that is a great way to get information about certain types of things, but it's only good for certain topics. So if you want to do something about the number of bank robberies in New Jersey and whether or not it's increasing or decreasing and why criminal justice system is improving or not improving and how it can be measured in that way, then probably talking to people who are involved in the local criminal justice or the FBI those are going to be good resources for interviews and for getting actual research information. But for another topic like, incidences of cancer or something like that, you're simply not going to want to just go out and interview somebody. You need to actually look at hardcore research. And in any case, this central diamond we have here, the online research, is the key thing for all of your research papers. So whether you're doing a little bit of library research, maybe some interviews, the main thing you're focusing on is the online research that you're going to get, which is going to be articles from scholarly databases that are going to back up your work. Okay, please don't start with Google, which isn't to say that you're not going to get to Google at some point, but you need to start with stuff that's scholarly, and it's very hard to determine if anything that comes up in Google is from a scholarly source. I'm going to talk to you in a few minutes about how you can evaluate stuff that comes out of Google, but I want to give you a sort of a trick to avoid having any worries that you're not getting the right kind of information. So I'll tell you what that is. Here's the thing. We're going to go to Mercer's homepage, which is mccc.edu, and click on that Student Services tab there at the top, and then the second bullet down is Library Services. We're going to go to that. When you're in the Library Services page, it looks like this, and then you'll see there's a thing on the left, the second tab down, it's called Online Databases. Click on that. Within this, you're going to find that we have over 60 different online databases that you have available to you. One specialty for law, one special for psychology, one special for mortuary science, they're all different kinds. But for right now, for what our purposes, we're just going to use the general database. And you can see it's right there. It's under general. So just click on that tab and it'll take you partway down the page. This is where you end up if you click on the General tab, but I want you to select this very first one. It's called Academic Search Premier / EBSCOhost. It's a weird name, but that's what it is. It's a paid site, but you have access to it as a student. If you're off campus, you're going to get redirected to this database login screen. It looks like this, and all you have to do is sort of follow the actual login procedure using your Mercer student email account name and then your password. Which is your last name. So, you should have access to it. If you're struggling, the phone number's there, 570-3561, and that will enable you to enter the research database. If you're on campus, you have automatic access to the databases, and this screen won't come up. So once you've completed this screen, here's where you go next. Okay, for EBSCOhost, it looks like this. Every different one of those 60 different databases looks slightly different, but they all have basically the same features. So if you learn the ones for this, you can apply them to the others. If you find you're writing something about nursing or something like that, we have a database specifically for nursing information, and you can use that one. But start here, figure out how to do it, then go check that one out, okay? I've decided that I want to write on mental health issues facing war veterans or from Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm maybe specifically interested in suicide rates and incidents of suicide. So I'm typing in some search terms just like I would in any other search engine. I put in PTSD and Iraq veterans. And we'll just see what comes up, okay? So a pretty vague search, but this is where I'm starting. This is the next page I get, and I've got a listing, and I've got actually many results. If you see over there on the left, there's sort of a light blue column, and at the very top, it tells me that I have like something like 38,000 different hits. Okay, so this was my first listing. It says financial well-being and post-deployment adjustment among Iraq and Afghanistan war veterans. Well, that sounds great, but I really wanted to write about PTSD and possible suicide incidences, and financial well-being just doesn't fit. Okay, by contrast, this is the second one, and it says, does PTSD moderate the relationship between social support and suicide risk in Iraq and Afghanistan war veterans seeking mental health treatment? That sounds much more along the right track for my paper. So if you see the steps, first I'm just scanning the listings, then I'm going to pick the sources that look like they fit my topic best. I can go do another search and try and make my search stronger. But I like this one. This is my second one on the list. So I'm going to just click on the blue link of the title there. And this is what I get. And it brings up a page that is not the actual full article, but it does give me all the information I need to evaluate whether I want to go on and read the full article, whether I want to download that PDF. So I'm going to read what's called the abstract. The abstract is this part here at the bottom of the page. The top tells us who wrote it, where it was written. It's in some kind of journal called Depression and Anxiety. Who knew that was a magazine, but it is. And then it gives me sort of the key terms here, veterans, mental illness, and so forth. And then at the bottom, I have this thing called an abstract, and an abstract is basically like a summary of what the thing was about. So I read the abstract, see if it fits with what I wanted to write about. If it does, great, I'll just download the PDF. If it doesn't, well, I've crossed this one off my list. Okay. So basically, this is the same procedure. You just go through them, see if you can tighten up your search a little bit, keep evaluating, keep if you get stuck, you're the best thing to do is make what I call a search terms chart. And basically, like for example, if I was doing something on diabetes and the incidence of children with obesity, I might have put in my search engine. This wouldn't have been a great search, but fat diabetic kids. Obviously, I might not get the best results from that particular search. So what I can do if I'm really stuck is make a chart where I put those at the top and then just think of synonyms. So fat, I could put obesity, overweight, whatever, diabetic, insulin, sugar, blood sugar. For kids, I can put children or youth and so forth. And then I can search all these additional terms. And once you've searched, additional terms, you can start to get clearer and more accurate search results. If you do online research using Google, and you certainly will after, exhausting the databases and finding as much as you can that you feel is from the scholarly journals that are going to help you. Those may be where you stop. You may have enough just from the online databases, but if you want to use Google or one of the other online search engines that's not one of the school databases, then you're going to have to evaluate each source very carefully. You have to decide, is this source knowledgeable enough about the subject? Is it biased in some way that makes me question the legitimacy of the source? Or is the information out of date for some reason? These are some preliminary questions you will have to ask yourself. So if we did the same search, Iraq PTSD veterans, in Google, we might get all kinds of different information, and we have to figure out if any of it is really usable. Okay. So knowledgeable, biased. You see the central picture here is like a doctor who's wearing a piece of like an whatever his equipment has information that shows that he got it from pharmaceutical companies who've paid him. And then we've got this out of date ad of a doctor who's saying more doctors smoke Camels than any other type of cigarettes, which was something they said in the 1950s. We had doctors selling cigarettes, obviously very out of date. Okay, is something a scholarly source? First of all, professors write a lot of the journal articles that you're going to find if you're searching through online databases. If they're talking about something that's in their own field, so if they're like a professor of psychology and they're talking about psychology, then they're all set. If they're talking about something that's totally different from their field, then they're not considered experts anymore. So for my sake, key thing is to have a really good bullshit detector. Basically, when you look at stuff online, some of it is clearly not usable and you can just automatically eliminate it. Other stuff is just you have to pour through it and see, does it make any sense? Things that are .gov or .edu are bound to be better, but something that's a .com or a .org could be practically anything. And knowing whether or not it's a really good site that has usable data, we've got to figure out exactly how to do this. One way is to look at the actual language of something in one of the articles that you pull up using Google. Here's an example. So if we're looking at this and this little white box is part of something you read on a website and it says of the 6 students interviewed, nearly half of them whined about receiving too little financial aid from the university, and 60% groaned about the lack of computers in their campus. Fully 75% of those polled complained that their classrooms were uncomfortable and overcrowded and that the food in the cafeteria wasn't to their liking. First of all, you can see that there are sort of flag words, which we call them flag words, like whined, groaned, complained. We can tell that the writer, for some reason, is biased against the students. We can also see that the sample size, 6 students, is just not enough to draw any inferences. 60% of 6 students, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So obviously there's something, right, we don't know why, but it's clear that this source is not one that's reasonable for a research paper. Okay, I've given you a couple of HTTP sites here, martinlutherking.org, malepregnancy.com, fairus.org. You could just, even if you just do the first two, I just recommend poking around. You can see in my description here that, there's some websites you can tell that it's not going to be, you know, good information. The title of it, if it's like, God hates gays or something, is obviously biased to begin with, so that's not going to work. But even if you look at these other ones, you can begin to see that there are other issues that you'll find if you look through them. So you go ahead and pause this site, and then you can click on those links and sort of check them out for yourself and evaluate them. So you probably saw that Martin Luther King website, if you poked around long enough, is sponsored by a white supremacist group. Obviously not actually Martin Luther King supporters. You can figure that out by going all the way down to the bottom of their main homepage, and it says like which group is the people who made the page, and it's something called like Stormfront. If you click on that and find out what it is, it's a white supremacist group. The male pregnancy site, I mean, it looks very convincing, certainly more so I think than the Martin Luther King one, but it's clear that When we're evaluating the suitability of sources, we're going to look for accuracy. Do you see any obvious errors, like the information, the pool of people who are being surveyed, or the data is simply too small? A legitimate scholar or researcher would identify where they got their information from. So, did they cite their sources? If they didn't tell you where they got their information from, then there's really a big problem. Any good researcher tells you where they got their information, and you're going to give basically like what's called a works cited page or bibliography at the end that tells where your work came from. So, if they're not doing that, there's something really amiss. Currency. If you're doing something about the Holocaust, it doesn't matter if your data is old. But if you're doing something about modern breast cancer, okay, here's the final tip. If you're using the research databases that we started out with at the beginning, make sure that if you're downloading a bunch of PDFs onto your computer, either put them on a flash drive, which is fine, or just put them on the main desktop of your computer and then upload them into Google Drive so that you have them safe somewhere so that you won't lose all your research if your computer decides to poop out on you. Okay, so that's my final tip. So basically, you're going to go through, you're going to start doing some research after you've begun thinking about topics. And you can use the online databases at Mercer. You know that they're going to be scholarly if you've selected that peer-reviewed journals box, and you could try a bunch of different topics and see if you get the kind of data that you're looking for. And okay, so that's the end of our presentation. You are ready to go. As soon as you've got some research information and you're pretty sure what topic you want to do, then you're going to write your proposal. Good luck.